Throughout this month, I've been having some fun in our devotional time, looking at some of Scripture's weird stories to see what wonderful lessons of grace we might learn. Here's one from the New Testament about a fellow named Eutychus. His name literally meant fortunate or lucky. The only account of his young life and death is given us by the physician Luke. The story is told in Acts chapter 20, verses 7 through 12. The setting is a Sunday. It was a worship service. Our lucky young man was lucky enough to get a seat in the balcony on the window ledge where presumably the wind was more comfortable. His luck turned bad, however, when the Apostle Paul got up to preach. And he preached, and he preached, and he preached, and kept on preaching. Don't you hate that? Some of us get a little groggy when the sermon goes a little long. I know you think I don't see. I do. As the story goes, Paul kept going until midnight. Can you see the young man? Can you see him trying to keep his eyes open? They start rolling back in his head. His eyelids droop. His head starts nodding off. He's fighting it, to be sure, but by the way his head keeps falling down and he keeps having to jerk it back up, you can see that it's a losing battle. That's when his balance goes and he leans just a little too far backward. The next thing you know, he's lying splat on the pavement 3 stories below. Verse 9 tells it, he began to sink off into a deep sleep while Paul talked still longer. Overcome by sleep, he fell to the ground 3 floors below and was picked up dead. Maybe this is a lesson in coming to worship well rested. While our Jewish friends worship on Saturday, on the Sabbath, the day of creation, Christians worship on Sunday, not the Sabbath, but rather the day of resurrection, of new creation. This means that we should, theoretically, be able to come to worship well rested and raring to go. On the other hand, maybe this story is a caution against preachers going too long. I get it. But how long is too long? That answer has changed throughout the centuries and may be changing now with a fair percentage of worshipers online. The need to shape worship for that context, and certainly the effect of social media on all our attention spans. But there's another option for a lesson drawn from this story, and it comes with the outcome, because Eutychus' story doesn't end with a fall any more than our lives end with a fall from grace. Verses 10 and following tell the outcome. But Paul went down and, bending over him, took him in his arms and said, "Do not be alarmed, for his life is in him." Then Paul went upstairs, and after he had broken bread and eaten, he continued to converse with them until dawn. Then he left. Meanwhile, they had taken the boy away alive and were not a little comforted. I know that there are some who interpret this story to say that Eutychus didn't ever die, that he just appeared dead. But would Luke, the physician, have made such a bad misdiagnosis? Maybe instead, Luke's including this story because it's a testimony of how one person died and came to life in the context of a community of faith, and how death doesn't get the final word. Maybe this is a story that, like the bread that Paul broke and that they shared together, points not just to death, but to resurrection and to life eternal, as we proclaim the mystery of faith. Christ has died. Christ is risen. Christ will come again. Maybe this is our takeaway, and from it we can be, as Acts says, not a little comforted,